Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bolton of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about. Greetings from the New Deal's annual conference in Washington, D.C. Today I talk with Williamsport Mayor Derek Slaughter. Williamsport, PA is the home of Little League Baseball's World Series and hosts thousands of kids every summer. It's also home to really exciting economic development initiatives and hotly contested political races. Mayor Slaughter talks about his path from a high school basketball coach to the city council to mayor and his hopes for the state going forward. Enjoy. Williamsport, Pennsylvania Mayor Derek Slaughter, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's nice to see you in person. We are at the New Deal Leaders Conference in Washington, D.C., trying to figure out a path forward for the Democratic Party and how we can continue to innovate and serve our constituents on the ground. Let's start by just asking, how's your city doing? Tell me about Williamsport.
Williamsport's doing very well. We have a lot happening right now. Of course, we're the home of Little League Baseball, Little League World Series. So, every August, that's exciting. We bring the whole world to us. But in general, lots happening. We have some economic development, parks and recreation. We upgrade all of our parks across the city. A lot of new businesses opening. A lot of people are excited because a Chick-fil-A and a Wawa are going to open here in 2025 in Williamsport, right across from Sheetz. So we have the whole Sheetz, Wawa.
You got the whole thing
happening. Yeah. So housing, just across the board. A lot of great things happening in our downtown revitalization. Got some new restaurants, some new breweries opening up downtown. So just it's good energy right now in Williamsport.
Tell me about the impact at facilitating, having all those little leaguers show up and the international attention that they get. It's just amazing.
It really is. I mean, just to have the whole world in Williamsport for 2 weeks and all eyes on Williamsport, just welcoming the diversity. I mean, folks from Mexico and Taiwan and Japan and Europe, and it's a lot of fun just to see the cultures, the various cultures, and our bars and our restaurants and the shopping places are all just full for 2 weeks. It's sort of indescribable, the feeling and just to have that taste of Americana. Baseball is America's pastime, just to see it in its purest form with little leaguers, and it's all free. You go over to the stadium and you just hang out. And one of the things that always happens, the kids slide down the hill in cardboard. It's just a tradition that's been going on forever. Even when I was a kid, we did it. So it's just a lot of fun, those 2 weeks in Williamsport.
What is your 2 weeks like when you have the whole world showing up? You must just be event to event,
right?
Greeting everyone, welcoming. What's that like?
It's a lot of fun, but it's very busy. It's very tiring. I mean, we start off and we kick the 2 weeks off with a Williamsport Welcomes World Parade. And so that's about 40,000 people in the parade route, and then just goes from there. So we have a lot of stuff happening in and around the series, downtown events, and of course events over at the complex. But it's extremely busy. It's extremely tiring. And frankly, from a public safety perspective, it can be a little challenging, but once we get through it, it's always, we look back, we reflect, but it's great. It's a great time for those 2 weeks.
So tell me how you went from a kid sliding down the hill at the baseball park to mayor of your community.
So I never thought politics was going to be in my future. Undergrad, I did IT. I went to grad school and got master's education. I started teaching math, ninth and 10th grade, primarily Algebra 1, Algebra 2. I was a local adjunct professor, and then I was the head girls varsity basketball coach for our high school. And what happened was my predecessor actually started taking down basketball hoops in our public parks, which as a basketball coach. I was the head coach at the time. And one of my best friends, who is still actually our boys, head basketball coach. Him and I met with the mayor. He said, listen, let us help you. Don't take the hoops down in our parks. There's trying to be a correlation between crime and basketball that didn't exist and wasn't there. And so he basically, didn't listen to us, didn't pay us any mind. And so I got more involved. Now, we'll give him a slight bit of credit. He was replacing the basketball court to the side of the basketball court with pickleball. And at that time was years ago, far before
it became a phenomenon.
Exactly, like it is now. But what we were saying at that time was it can coexist. Install the pickleball court, that's fine, but put the hoops back up, adjacent to it where they were. Anyway, I got more involved. I had some folks ask me about running for city council. I had never thought about it. Went to a training in Harrisburg, our state capital, loved it, came back, talked to some council folks that were on our city council, decided to run. It was a 4-year term. Halfway through, our mayor was up, and I had the same folks sort of ask me to throw my hat in the ring for mayor, and I did, and I won. So it was sort of very rapid progression from not really thinking about politics as far as me being a candidate to all of a sudden I'm mayor. So it was teaching and coaching, city council, mayor, and it all came full circle. I told that story. We had our local Air Force recruiter who's fantastic. Told him that story. We had a couple of the higher ups in the Air Force come, and they said, well, we have some marketing promotion money. So now they sponsored brand new basketball hoops in our city parks. We had a ceremony. It was wonderful. So now we have the Air Force logo on our backboards, beautiful new hoops, beautiful new courts, including pickleball courts, tennis courts. So it's really a great story, and it's come full circle.
I love that. I mean, it's what small town politics is all about.
Absolutely.
Tell me, what has surprised you about having not thought about politics or the role, and then quickly ascending? What surprised you about the job?
Just a few things. One, just the sheer number of phone calls, emails, text messages you get. I knew there would be a lot, but it's a lot. And everyone, we always say we prioritize the priorities, because whether they're calling you about their neighbor's garbage or, a massive pothole in their street, that's the priority to them. And so they don't want to hear, well, that's not as important as, John, who just called me, who has a much more important problem. Well, this is a huge issue for us. So that's one. Two is just everyone's emotions in this current climate, especially. So I took over in January 2020 as mayor. And so we all know how that year went, but it was just managing the emotions, regardless of where that is, all over the political spectrum. And so coming in during that time, really, it was something, of course, that none of us expected. But then as coming as mayor, to really being my first year and trying to figure out how do I navigate not just being a new mayor, but also navigate dealing with people who just really were very, very emotional and politically charged and, divisive and polarizing, as we know.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on electoral politics, but you had J.D. Vance showing up. Obviously Pennsylvania is a swing state. He holds a big rally, talks about deportation, really divisive issues. Talk about what it's like to have a national campaign come and center itself in your community.
Well, we got word of that literally less than a week that he was going to be in Williamsport. I was actually in Scranton, Pennsylvania at the time with Mayor Cognetti, and he was scheduled to be in Scranton. And Mayor Cognetti, who's also a New Deal leader, says to me, he's not coming to Scranton. Actually, he's coming to Williamsport. And I was like, really? I didn't realize. So having to basically shift gears. So that upsets your whole, everything that you're working on, your public works, your public safety. Basically, you stop everything that you're doing because you have to prepare for a national candidate, particularly a vice presidential candidate coming into your city from the safety requirements. And, we saw everything that happened in Butler, PA. You don't want that to happen in your city. So you basically spend an enormous amount of time, and basically it sucks all the energy and lifeblood out of your city employees to prepare for this event, to make sure that nothing happens. So it really, and then to have, of course, all eyes on Williamsport while the national candidate is there. And everyone is then reaching out to me asking, how do I feel? What do I think? So it's draining and very time consuming to have that happen, particularly with just a few days notice.
Tell us what we need to understand about Pennsylvania that has supported Josh Shapiro, another New Dealer, and a bunch of great folks, but obviously didn't quite get there for Vice President Kamala Harris. Tell me the state of play in Pennsylvania and what you think, what are lessons learned coming out of the election?
Well, I think there's a few. One is messaging and being able to connect and relate to the electorate. I mean, I had so many folks tell me, Derek, we're with you, but we just don't feel like, there was no primary. They're just shoving her down our throat. We don't feel like that we connect with the messaging of the Democratic Party or that it's authentic or genuine. And so I think that's one area. And two, I think, just generally being able to meet people where they are. I mean, I know for a lot of folks that I talk to, and I'm right in the heart of Pennsylvania, Central PA, the T, as it's called. And so for them, it was just cost of bread, cost of milk. That's what you kept hearing. And what was our response to that? How could we, even though some said, I may not vote for Trump or I may not support all of his ideas or concepts, but I don't know if I'm with Vice President Harris. She just doesn't seem to resonate with me. I'm not sure what she's going to do. Liberal, which we just heard earlier today, was a term that was thrown around a lot. They just felt she was too liberal, even though you could look at her policies and see and really understand what she was, had she been elected, what she would have done. And they weren't seeing that from Trump, but they still felt more connected there. So I think that's the play in Pennsylvania right now is how do we connect with voters and make them understand and feel confident in our party that if we're elected, they know that we are competent and can get the job done. And we see it at local level. They say, Derek, well, we know you. We see what you're doing. So I think, again, comprehensively across the country, Democrats, we have to maybe not be so humble. You have to talk about what you're doing, what we're actually getting done, and the positive impacts that's having not on your community, but on the folks in your community and how that when they're sitting around the dinner table, why we're better for you than other candidates are.
Let's talk about what you're getting done, because I do a Google search of you and it's groundbreaking it's investment here, it's this leveraging these federal dollars. Talk about your efforts around economic development, infrastructure, and what you're doing on the ground to make folks see you and potentially the Democratic Party as a party of investment and addressing some of those kitchen table issues.
Absolutely. But we always say well done beats well said. And again, I think that's the other area, particularly in Pennsylvania and other swing states, just to go back on the previous question very briefly, that you have to show them what you're doing and meet and talk to groups that may not necessarily always agree with you. And that's okay. I went and I literally talked to our Patriot Party a few months ago, and it went very well because, again, we're talking about what we're doing, what we've got done. And so to answer this question, we're doing a lot of groundbreaking, a lot of ribbon cuttings. We have a number of breweries that have opened, a number of restaurants. We're investing in infrastructure. We have a lot of federal dollars coming down. We're fortunate that we received some congressionally directed spending from Senator Casey, Senator Fetterman, Congressman Musser to address our levy. We're recertifying our levy with the Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, making investments in housing, making investments in parks and recreation, which when I took over was a really, really high priority, right behind public safety, basically 1A and 1B, about a percentage point, less than a percentage point away from each other when we did some polling. And so we're investing in that. Our public safety, again, making sure that people feel safe in their neighborhoods and their communities. We just rolled out our co-responder program, mental health, behavioral health co-response. So they're going to be social workers embedded with our police officers and some EMS and fire. So really across the board, working with Governor Shapiro on his team and our federal delegation, being able to secure grant funding, getting projects done. And that's what we're able to show the voters and electorate. Listen, we're actually getting stuff done, as Governor Shapiro likes to say. But in Williamsport, it's a lot of fun. And when you're actually doing that, how can they argue with you? When you say, look, I've almost been in office 5 years now. Look at the progress that we're making. Mixed use development is happening. We're working with the 2 colleges, doing projects over there, revitalizing, particularly like Cumming College, which is in our old city section of town, bringing that back to making it vibrant again, and restaurants, and really opening that section up to downtown that wasn't there before. So just a lot of exciting things happening, and we're just going to keep going, hitting the ground running, and a lot more to come in 2025.
People may be watching or listening and wondering, you have all these projects coming in. What role does the mayor play in these projects? Can you talk about sort of in the beginning, middle, and end, the role that you try to play to facilitate these things happening and coming to fruition?
Absolutely. So, when you start as mayor, you have a lot of wonderful ideas that you want to, address or try to get accomplished. And then, of course, once you start to govern, you gotta be flexible. But folks reach out to you with ideas. One, you got to see, does it fit within our city? Would this work? Does this idea make sense? Is it something that we could get done? And then from there, if it does, you start to work with different folks, developers, the funding, the capital stack. What does that look like? Do you need to talk to federal folks, state folks? Permitting is a huge thing. I know Governor Shapiro just rolled out the fast track permit program, because that was what I was hearing from developers a lot, is that particularly in Pennsylvania, it just takes too long for the permit process. We want to get these projects rolling. We want to invest in economic development here, but we could go to another state that does it a lot quicker. So I think Governor Shapiro has been great on that, and working with him to make sure that works. And then as you're moving through the process, the mayor just really is the champion, the cheerleader, so to speak, sort of facilitates who needs to talk to who, to developers or zoning or codes. What does that look like? And then, of course, the final product when we're out there, cutting the ribbon and welcoming all the folks. So really, the mayor is almost the piece of the puzzle that sort of just brings everyone together and makes sure the right people are talking to each other who need to bring this project to fruition and finally to completion.
That's a great description. Yeah, sometimes you're visionary, more often than not, you're like facilitator, problem solver.
Right.
And then at the end, you get to be the cheerleader when you cut the ribbon, which is always fun. You talked about the real investment in parks and recreation programs, basketball hoops. You also see a real commitment to you going back to schools, talking to kids, making investments in youth programming. Talk about how maybe your experience as a basketball coach, initiates that support, and what you're able to see in that area in terms of supporting kids in your community.
Absolutely. So we're doing a lot right now in the youth space. And as you said, coming from the teacher and coaching role, the youth is really, really important to me. And we see across the country that we really need to make investments in our youth. So I'm working with the Boys and Girls Club right now. We do not have a Boys and Girls Club currently in Williamsport. We never have had one. So we're trying to get a Boys and Girls Club open up, particularly for the teen programming. There's a lot of programming for kindergarten to sixth graders, but that 7th to 12th and particularly 7th to 10th grade range, there's not a lot of programming for those kids. And they're just sort of milling around if they're not in sports, if they're not in clubs or extracurricular activities. What is there for them to do? And so that's what we're looking at, working with. My cousin actually runs a very successful nonprofit in Philadelphia. It's called NOMO, New Options, More Opportunities. So just met with him, trying to, again, get a satellite campus opened up in Williamsport for workforce development, intervention as far as criminal intervention, make sure that they're not during the after school hours or the times where they're more likely to maybe get in a little bit of trouble, that we have programming for them. Working with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We started a Bigs and Blue program, so connecting our police officers with littles, as they call it in Big Brothers, Big Sisters, that mentorship, and really just mentorship across the board, working with our school district and our 2 colleges to say, okay, how do we, these kids that really need mentorship, they need role models, how can we connect these folks, these kids with folks in our community who can show them, maybe a little bit of a better way, or expose them to opportunities they otherwise may not be exposed to. So youth are going to grow up and get older. And when we were investing in our parks and recreation, we had a few folks around the parks that were saying, well, there's going to be a lot of kids here. Right. But that's what we want.
That's kind of right.
We want them to be involved in, activities that are going to grow them and not sort of sitting around, milling around with some of the negative energy. So anyway, it's a lot. We're really investing heavily in our youth in Williamsport, and there's a lot more to come. And we're very, very excited the work we're doing, the work we're going to do. And I say it all the time, you can never have too many things for the youth to do. They're never gonna run out of, like, okay, we're at capacity. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah. They got energy to burn.
Absolutely.
It's our job to channel it. Right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about how you think, you didn't grow up planning to be mayor, run for office. How do you think about where to apply your time and talent in mayor or other roles? Like how do you think about your future?
So that's a question I get quite often. I'm not sure, because if you would have said to me, 7 or so years ago that you were going to be mayor, I would have looked at you, I had 3 heads. But I love it. I really enjoy the work that we're doing here. And I enjoy being mayor, meeting so many people, get to travel around and borrow ideas from all over the country and come to conferences such as this that I can bring back and make positive impacts in our community. So moving forward, it could be higher office. I would never rule that out. That's sort of what I've been thinking about, especially, in my second term now as mayor. What does come next? And maybe that is what it is, some sort of higher office. I don't know what office that would be at this point, but I really enjoy the role that we play in the government sector in people's lives. And particularly, there's so many of us that govern well, and humbly, I think we're doing an okay job. And I'm just meeting so many, just the last day or so here, meeting so many officials who are doing such a great job governing that, I follow on social media or whatever, and learning from them. And so I think as I am exploring what might come next for me, I'm going to have conversations with those folks to see, what their roles entail, and if that's something that I would, I'd be interested in doing, and probably.
I love it. Well, hopefully the New Deal can play a role in that thinking, and also in giving you a bunch of ideas that you can steal and take full credit for, as we all like to do.
Right.
We love having you in New Deal. Love having you on the podcast. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at New Deal for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.